Anyways, welcome everybody to the Friday Morning Freestyle. My name is Dan. This is Hard Knox Talks. In studio today, we have Mr. Brad Siroski with us.
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, Brad. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I got a relatively quiet day today, so it was a good day to pop in and have a chat with you. And yeah, man, things are going good. Business is picking up.
Yeah,
got some stuff coming up right away. So
it's interesting. It seems lately like it's been tough getting guests all summer, because everybody's on vacation, spending time with family, doing whatever. And it just seems like the people like yourself, typically quite busy. The stars, what did I call you? Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah. I think it was Wednesday.
Yeah. And you just, the stars aligned and here we are.
Yeah. It worked out perfect for my schedule, perfect for yours. So glad to be here today.
All right. Well, let's get started.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay. I just want to let you know that today's live production is brought to you in part by Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, offering peer support to those who have lost someone to drug-related harms or is currently struggling with the substance use of a loved one. The School of Public Health at the University of Saskatchewan, offering a graduate certificate program in substance use health and well-being, and the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, reminding us that housing is the only strategy proven to break the homelessness to jail cycle. To learn more about all our sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to do us a solid and buy us a coffee, you can find all those links in the show notes below. So let's get Brad back in here. So I've been seeing some of your reels lately.
Yeah.
And we've got Sue the service animal up in your lap.
That's all right.
And one thing that stood out to me was one that you were talking about accountability. And you almost went like old school program on us. Like, you know what I mean? Like kick your ass around and, sit down, shut up type thing. So what brought that on? Like what inspired you to go off like that?
So, one of the things that I talk to all my clients about, and I have like a large amount of things and talk to my friends in recovery and talk to everybody about, is owning your shit, like being accountable for what you did. Before you got sober, and being accountable for what you do after you get sober as well. I see a lot of working in the addictions field on a daily basis. I see a lot of people that come in and the first thing they want to do is somewhat pass the buck. It's my mom's fault. It's my ex-wife's fault. It's this person's fault. It's the government's fault. It's everybody's fault. But really, we have to take some of this accountability on ourselves. And you mentioned the old school type attitude. Well, I'm 11 years sober, and a lot of the guys that were addictions counselors 11 years ago, for me, that's the approach they took. And to be honest, some of those harder conversations saved my life.
Yeah. So, you did mention like sometimes you wish that, with the people that maybe you're working with or have worked with in the past, like you've had to sort of tether that desire to take it there. Is that
yeah,
true?
for sure. I mean, I think when we were talking the other day and on the phone, I used the term read the room.
Yeah.
I mean, you always have to read the room. I'm a very empathetic person. It comes with part of my job. I'm not going to be like, come on, man, pull your shit together if you're having an absolute breakdown in front of me. But I think the thing is that we really do have to pay attention when we get into early recovery about what part we played in our substance use, man. Like we just can't keep passing the buck all the time. We can't keep blaming everybody else. For a long time, I held a lot of resentment towards my father. He was hard on me growing up, verbally abusive, sometimes physically abusive, stuff like that. But it really, my dad didn't put the bottle of vodka or the pile of cocaine under my nose. I did that. We got to start being responsible when we hit our recovery for kind of what part we had. Like, yeah, sure, my dad was hard on me for sure, but I could have found better ways to deal with that. I could have found better resources. I could have found better routes to take than going to substance use. And once I started into the substance use, I certainly didn't have to keep doing it.
And I've seen that particularly in memes from time to time, saying things like, stop blaming your childhood for being a shitty person. or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know? And they get that's a harsh way to say it. Like,
It
I'm not
is.
saying that I necessarily endorse that statement and exactly how I laid it out there, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know that I endorse that statement exactly like that either, but
Yeah.
but it is about taking responsibility. I mean, if we want to find someone to blame, we can always find somebody to
Oh,
blame.
yeah,
We can blame
we're
the
amazing
system,
at
we
that.
can blame the government, we can blame. I said in my little reel I said, it's not your addictions counselor's fault that you didn't make the treatment program. You made it to the bar yesterday. You could have made it to the treatment program. We need to start taking accountability for our actions. I mean, we can't be reliable in our recovery for our addictions counselors. They're carrying caseloads of up to 30 clients, some of them more at a time. I mean, if you look at the opioid assisted addictions counselors in this city, they're carrying caseloads of up to 300 at a time. It's absolutely ludicrous.
And being expected to see these people how often?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's more of a pop in, a check in, make sure that they're getting their medication type stuff. But I mean, that's where we have to start saying to the clients, like, you really have to take your recovery into your own hands. I can't, even if I carry a 20-person caseload, I can't be. Imagine if I had to walk you or take you to every meeting. Imagine if I had to make sure that I had to make sure every client of mine got to the door of a recovery program. You know, addictions counselors can help to a point.
Yeah.
Community supports can help to a point, but
At some point, you
this
have
is
to
your
participate.
freaking recovery, man. This
Yeah.
is your recovery.
Yeah.
Take ownership of it. Be proud of it. Get out there and start doing it. It's just like business. It's just like setting up for this podcast. It's just like any of that.
Yeah.
You know, you can bring the guest in, but you got to put all the work into this stuff. This is Dan's podcast, not mine.
And I got to make sure the countdown is at 2 minutes instead of 5 seconds.
Yeah, all that stuff, right?
I didn't even notice that it was ended. And it took me like 30 seconds. Like, oh, wait a minute, we're actually in it.
Yeah. So I mean, that it's become very apparent to me through my 11 years of sobriety, my 5 to 6 years now in the addictions field, that the clients who really take their recovery into their own hands and really take accountability and really own their shit and really have a good hard look at the stuff that they did, they're the ones that tend to have really good success rates.
You know, and that's what worked for me. You know, like I was very much like, I went to Pine Lodge, and you know, Pine Lodge has a reputation.
Yeah,
You know, for
Pine
anyone
Lodge.
who doesn't know, they call it Payne Lodge, right? And like they are very militant, I would say, even, and they refuse to, and maybe their program has changed, and maybe I'm, you know, like this was just my experience with their program. It was very much they held a mirror up to you, and they refused to let you look away.
Yeah, I mean, I went there twice. So
Well, you're a hard case.
So I got a pretty good look at that program twice, and they broke you down in order to rebuild you, but they just basically wouldn't put up with any bullshit. If you were lying, they just said, "Well, you're lying. We know you're lying. Stop lying. Be honest with us. Be honest with yourself, or you're not going to make it." And in my opinion, they're right.
You know, and it's funny. There's a saying that you know, we need to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
But we can't leave them there. And I think it's important to recognize that there are stages in very early recovery, and this, what we're talking about today, it won't work for everyone.
No.
You know, but like look at my wife, Donna. She got her ass handed to her out there on the street, you know, and when she came in, she needed like a gentle approach.
For
right?
sure.
And that's what worked for her. She didn't go to the rooms. She had a couple of workers, the social workers and stuff, that checked in on her, and she had a friend or two, and she just sort of like kept to herself, you know. And as a program person in early recovery, I was very much like the torch carrying, like, you got to do it this way or you're gonna die, you know. And I've made my amends as much as I possibly can for behaving that way, right? For sort of like forcing my ways on other people. But what have you noticed? And maybe this is tough to answer, but you've been being an addictions counselor for some time now.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly you've learned how to navigate those waters. Are there, like, you know, for maybe some family members that might be watching, are there indicators to you where you think, okay, it's time to get a little bit hard on this person?
Yeah. I mean, you said it the best. There's 7.5 billion people in this world, right? We're all just a little bit different. So obviously what I'm saying on here is not going to work for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Donna needed the more gentle approach. Lots of my clients need the more gentle approach. That's what I said about reading the room. You know, if somebody comes in completely broken, you're not boot camping their ass, you know, like that's not how this goes. But what, if speaking from personal experience, my parents, they watched this go on for, like I say, I was in addictions for 22 years. And at the end, they just couldn't take anymore. When you start to notice that you're just enabling people, and it's hard to notice when you're a parent, then sometimes you got to close the door. My parents just told me that every time you come here, you're stealing from us. Your dad's wallet's $100 lighter. There's no liquor left in our cabinets. You take gas from the gas tanks. You do all this stuff, and you're dangerous. Like, we just can't have you around anymore. That was part of, there was a bunch of stuff that piled up, a bunch of people that started, you know, setting firm boundaries with me. Like my sister said, you can't be around our kids because we're scared, because you show up here and you're intoxicated, you're high on cocaine, all these things. We don't want to put our kids in a vehicle with you. And we certainly don't trust you to be alone with them, because what if you pass out and the house burns down, you know, all those things. And then all these other people in my life started saying to me, like, we can't be around you, Brad. You're a mess. You're a mess. And all of those things, Daniel, all those things stacked up. And then there was one final thing, and I've talked about this in your podcast in the past, where my daughter's mom set a firm boundary with me and said, you can't be around her. I'm filing for sole custody. And all of these things piled up until that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And I needed that. I needed that accountability, because I would have never, ever, ever made it to treatment without those people holding those hard boundaries with me, holding their line with me. And I'm not saying you have to necessarily put somebody out on the street if they have no other options. That's certainly not what my parents did to me. But at some point, you do have to start holding them accountable for their actions. You do have to start saying no. My mom never said no to me up until the last 2 years. Borrow money. Yep. I would guilt her. Like, addictions make us do badass things, man. So it's changes very much from person to person, but I needed that accountability.
And you know, it's funny what they say, addiction is not a choice, right? But there's a debate going on around that. Typically in people who don't have the same level of understanding that necessarily that you and I have, but I get lost in that, you know, like, if it's not a choice, and we're lost in it, and we're powerless over it. We're powerless over alcohol, right? Like some programs of recovery talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, because we're sitting here sober now. So at some point we took our power back.
Yeah. I think that it can't continue to be the choice. You have to change, right? Like I made a choice to get sober. Everything's a choice. Everything we do is a choice. You choose to use drugs. You choose to get behind the wheel of a car if you're drinking. You can choose to get sober. You can choose to make your life better. Life is all about choices. And I don't think that necessarily, I think there's definitely can be some root causes to addictions. That maybe people use that as more of a coping mechanism. But I somewhat chose addiction to be my crutch for a while, but I very much chose to stop using as well. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know if that answered that or anything, but that, I mean, maybe I just danced around the issue a little bit there, but I feel like that, you know, you have the choice to use, you also have the choice to stop. So make the right frickin' choice, man. Like,
yeah. And it certainly doesn't feel like a choice, you know, even if it was a choice in the beginning, because we all chose that very first time, like, here's a substance, I can choose to use it or not. Right. But at some point it doesn't feel like a choice anymore. Like, our brain gets hijacked and we just feel like we need this or bad things are going to happen.
Man, I just liked what it did for me. I liked the fact that all of a sudden when I used, there was no more problems at home. There was no more stress. There was no more anxiety. The depression that I was carrying around with me, it kind of went away. I was able to talk to people. I was able to talk to women. You know, I liked what it did for me. So I chose to hang on to it. But when it started to get ugly, man, I had to make that choice to get out of it. You know, like, we can choose to live in that dirt and that filth and the trauma and the depression and the anxiety and the stress and all that, or we can choose to try and heal from it in some way, shape, or form and choose to live again.
got a couple of comments coming in here. One from my friend Twinkle. Good morning, Twinkle. Thank you for the comment. Twinkle says, is it enabling to stay gentle or, in a sense, coddle? There's fear in being tough because doing so can push them to getting more substance. Now, that's an interesting talking point. Now, when you were offered these ultimatums, like when your parents said you can't come around here no more, your ex-wife, whatever, said these things, was there a level of was there a gentle tone to their voice, or were they screaming and yelling and calling you names?
Well, the parental thing was almost a borderline intervention. I think
Okay.
that's back when that show was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I showed up there and my sisters were there and my mom and dad were there, and it was kind of a whole family chat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was firm. There was no yelling and screaming like, you're not allowed here anymore. It was like, we just can't do this. Like, it was more pleading, I think, than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But the touching on what she said about using more substances, I didn't use any more or less substances when people were hard on me.
Yeah.
I was already using an incredibly large amount of substances.
Yeah.
There was no more when somebody held me accountable. I didn't go, oh, I better use more today.
Yeah.
I just used the same amount. Or sometimes I actually tried when people held me accountable. That's a lot of the times I went to recovery programs. Like right after my family had that intervention talk with me, I went to Pine Lodge for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew what they were saying was true.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did want to change. Just at that point in my life, I hadn't quite gotten to the point where I was ready to change yet.
So they offered you a kind ultimatum, like
Approach everything with love.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even if you're, all my clients, I'm firm with them, but
Mhm.
I love them.
Mhm.
I shared that story with you, Daniel, when we were talking on the phone about that, the guy that worked at Detox when I was there. And I was all excited about it. I got into this treatment program and it was a year long. And I lived in detox, man. I think I seen this person, they refer to themselves as a detox junkie.
Mm.
And
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that kind of sounds like me. I was in detox like in Saskatoon here, like 14 times
Mhm.
between 2010 and 2012.
Mhm.
At one point I had the record for the longest stay, like 70 some days, because they didn't want me to die between there and treatment. Right.
Uh-huh.
And
You stayed at Larson House for 76 days.
yeah, I think I was there for like 2 full months. So
Wow.
whatever that works out to, 60, maybe it's 60 some days.
Mhm.
And because I had a big treatment I think it was one of the Pine Lodge programs coming up.
Mhm.
And they knew if they put me out in the street with the amount of alcohol that I was drinking and the substances I was using at that time, I would likely die.
Mhm.
So I stayed there and I got to know this one counselor there very well. And actually I won't share his name just for confidentiality reasons. But
Mhm.
I went there with the last time I was in the program, and I said to him, I was going to this year-long treatment program, and I'm like, guess what? Guess what? I'm going to this year-long treatment program. And he looked at me and he goes, who gives a shit?
Mhm.
And it knocked the wind out of my sails.
Mhm.
And then he looked at me and he said, Brad, can you see what you're doing here?
Mhm.
You've been here like 14 times. You're a smart guy. If you don't change something in yourself, nothing's going to change.
Mhm.
And he was firm with me, and it was like the delivery of that first punch, but then he kind of wrapped me up and said, like, so what do you want to do with your life?
Mhm.
And I told him, I said, I want your job. And he
Mhm.
said, then get yourself better, get your shit together
Mhm.
and go out and do it.
Mhm.
You can be firm and loving at the same time, but you have to have boundaries. You have to
Mhm.
hold your loved ones. If you're an addictions counselor, your clients, your friends, your family, you have to hold them all accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see here. We got another comment. Mike G. Let's see what's going on here. Mike, thanks for the comment. Mike says, not arguing, just adding. As an alcoholic, I always turned to more alcohol when I was told to stop. I guess alcohol was such a coping mechanism for me that I used it literally for everything, including when the subject of stopping against my own will was brought up. Did you feel like you were stopping against your will when that ultimatum was laid on you?
I mean, I always felt like, people were setting too firm of boundaries. I remember saying like to my sisters, fine, then your kids just won't have an uncle. But that was the addictions talking, man. That
Yeah.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
That was me not wanting to face my issues.
Mhm.
That was a lot of fear
Mhm.
and a lot of sadness and a lot of trauma and a lot of other things that those, don't get me wrong. Recovery is the hardest thing you're ever going to do.
Mm-hmm.
when I didn't want to deal with the traumas in my life. I didn't want to face my mental health issues without something that had been masking them for years.
Yeah.
But I had to, and I'm so much better today because of it.
Yeah.
That's
I I think in memes some days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
One of a meme I made some time ago, and I don't know if it ever really gained much traction or not, but it was something like, addiction's really dangerous, but so is recovery.
Mhm.
You know, so be careful, like how you go at it. Like, don't go at it alone.
I always say, like, especially with people who are dealing with intense amounts of trauma, which some people like Gabor Mate would argue to say that 100% of people, I don't know necessarily that I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, a heavy amount of substance use is due to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I always refer to trauma. I always say, be careful when you're dealing with your trauma, when you're coming out of your addictions and you're starting to face this stuff head on, make sure you're facing it with a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you rip a Band-Aid off a bullet hole, you're going to bleed to death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what trauma is. It's a bullet hole. It's been there forever. It's never healed.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you're just covering the substance use, whatever is the Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make sure that you're with
set
a
up.
surgeon, so to speak, to look after your trauma. So, like, I think there's a lot of fantastic trauma counselors. There's a lot of, in the Indigenous healing treatment, there's a lot of great ceremonies and things like that I've seen that have really sweats and all that, the ceremonial stuff that they do. It's just there's fantastic ways to deal with it. So make sure when you get into your early addictions, you look into all these things and you look into them seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just jump to the first counselor. Don't just unload your trauma on your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Your best friend,
the person in front of you in the grocery store.
Yeah, your best friend is not capable of holding your 22 years of trauma.
I wish I could come across some of just the random community members that I would tell my story to, because I was really proud, right? Like I had a few weeks sober, right? I was just fresh out of treatment, and people would be like, how's it going? And be like, I'm 37 days sober today, and then I would tell them some horrific story or something.
Yeah, well, I still do it, Daniel. I had a doctor's appointment before I came here today, and I told my doctor that I was doing a podcast on addictions. I'm proud of it, man. I wear my recovery.
I mean, that's not a horrific story, though.
No.
I'm sorry if this is traumatic for you right now.
No, that wasn't a trauma dump for sure, but it's, it just, when we're in recovery,
mm-hmm.
it's something to be proud of. So
mm-hmm.
a lot of people, I think I seen something maybe on Facebook this morning about people saying only 2 days. And, 2 days is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Everybody starts at 1 day. Everybody starts at 1 minute. Everybody
mm-hmm.
starts, it's not only 2 days, it's 2 days.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, and I see that too, and I also approach that in the same direction, especially when people are in early recovery. You go to these anonymous fellowships and they got key tags, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that they have those key tags. It's just a piece of plastic, But I worked hard for that orange key tag, and that was pie in the sky to me. I can't believe that I have a 30-day key tag right now, and then there's the 60-day, and then there's the 90-day. They space them. It gives you something to work towards, but I'm thinking now, with the way our province seems to be set up with the 30-day or the 28-day treatment program, when you are working with people who are fresh out of treatment, is there a framework that you follow that to bring them into being a productive human being? Because I know 30 days in treatment and then being sent back out into the frying pan, that's going to medical school for a month and then being said, here, do brain surgery.
Yeah, 100%. Well, first I'm going to bounce around a bit on that one. So I want to go back to the 30, 60, 90 days thing, because I fully support 12-step programs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I never used a lot of the 12-step program. After I used a lot of my 12-step program leading up to the year-long program I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the 30, 60, 90 day, but what I always tell my clients is don't let numbers define your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 6 months of sobriety, that's 180 days.
Mm-hmm.
If you relapse, that's 1 day. If you had $180 and you lost one, you wouldn't throw the other 179 away.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that your recovery isn't defined by numbers, because I see so many people that piss away long-term recovery, they relapse and then they binge for like a month, a week, 2 months, 6 months because they think they've ruined
I threw
everything.
20 years away. Like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. You made a mistake.
Yeah.
There's no successful companies in the world that haven't made mistakes on the way to becoming Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
So don't piss everything away over a mistake.
Yeah.
And then back to your question. Sorry, that's how my ADHD works.
No, I'm glad I was like 5 questions at once. So like we're in the same boat, man.
when people come out in early recovery, I have a lot of things that I initially talk to them about. I basically go back to looking at myself because I do my addictions counseling through relation. Like my stuff is very relatable. And I think that obviously things are going to work a little different for every person, but a lot of the stuff that I went through and focused on in early recovery translates to other people, like self-care. So I talk to people about holistic self-care, about taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Because if you're not well, then you're not going to be recovered. I talk to people about goals, planning, scheduling,
maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. I talk to people about forgiveness. I basically tell them, like, ask them, what have you learned from treatment? What was happening going in? And what do you think you need? Because some people need sober living homes. Some people need full-time accountability. Some people need a check-in with an addictions counselor once a week because they want to work. They not only want to see themselves be sober, but they want to see themselves be successful as well. So work life and stuff becomes important. So maybe you need 2 sessions with an addictions counselor a week. It's very much what the client need, where they're at in their life, meeting them where they're at. That's the whole thing with that I've always ran is everybody's in a different spot in their life. Some people need more treatment. I've seen clients go from a treatment program to a week in the community back to another treatment program because they just don't feel ready. And if that's how you feel, great.
Yeah.
Do what works for you because we're all different.
Yeah, and like for example, and I always pick on Donna because like her story and my story is so much different, right?
Right.
Like she needed a safe place to go and lick her wounds. You know, she went and she found she like immersed herself in meditations, in breathing, you know, and she leaned on just a couple of people, but like her circumstance was like she was afraid to leave the house. There was bad things happened.
Sure, 100%.
So
like, I went through trauma, but I don't compare addictions. I don't compare alcohol to heroin use or fentanyl. I don't compare my trauma to anybody else's, but there's certainly some people that need to deal with their traumas in different ways than I dealt with mine. And trauma doesn't have a timeline. That's the one thing I like to make sure that everybody knows that you can't just be like, that guy went and in 3 months dealt with his traumatic stuff with a trauma therapist or whatever. So I'm going to do that because you might have a completely different timeline leading up to it with your trauma or totally different experiences. I mean, there's all kinds of different abuse. There's all kinds of different things that you can witness in your life that are traumatic that you can go through. You can't even try and put a timeline on it.
And well, I mean, I went through some things that I still get triggered on today.
Yeah.
You know, like there was some stuff that recently came up that happened when Donna and I were both in active addiction. And it comes up and suddenly she's the enemy again, you know, now I'm living with the enemy, you know, and I can sit here and chuckle about it, but like, it's very real in that moment.
For sure.
And there was, you know, in the program, when I was in the program early on, it was very much, you know, you stay out of someone else's recovery, you know, like it's a men with the men, women with the women. Right. But it took that reoccurring thought process for me to, and finally what I was thinking came out of my mouth, and it came out like yelling, and I wasn't even like, she heard it from another room, and I was talking to someone and I just started yelling about this stuff and she heard it, and that fostered a conversation that helped us finally put some things to bed. Right. You know, that like we just opened up and we had this conversation, and we very much just like, you know, there's recovery for me, and there's a recovery for her, and then there's recovery for us. Like there's another entity, and then there's us and the kids, right? So,
and there's a solid possibility if you guys would have tried to have that conversation any time earlier, that it wouldn't have went the way it did as well.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like 6.5. So we spent like 5 years apart, right? And then we've been together for over 1.5 years now, and it took that long for that conversation to happen, for that trust to be built, so these things could be said in a safe space.
Right.
You know? So do you do work with family members?
Yeah, I do. In my private practice, I do work with parents. I do work with people who are struggling with addictions. I do work with brothers, sisters, family members, loved ones, wives, husbands. I work with everybody around that. I've done a lot of extra studying outside of my school, a lot of extra classes to just kind of be a more well-rounded counselor, because like I mentioned earlier, I'm a very relatable person. Like I've lived through addiction, so I can understand what you're going through. But knock on wood, up to this point, I haven't been a parent of someone struggling with addictions. Now I have 3 daughters, and because I've lived through it, I hope they never have to go through what I went through. I'm not saying it won't happen though. So, but I don't have that lived experience in that aspect. But I do have one thing that I think, besides an education, that makes me able to help people with that, and that's empathy.
What was it like? So you had this ultimatum,
Right.
and you came back, you went to treatment, you did all of these things. And what was it like when you came back to your family? Were you like filled with shame? Were you like, I'm recovered now, you should all forgive me, why don't you still trust me?
I think it was a couple of those things. I was filled with a lot of shame coming out. I was shame. I'm still filled with shame around some of the stuff I do. I share with my clients every once in a while. There's a spot where I rolled my vehicle that if my daughter would have been with me and I had just left her with my mom, that it would have killed her. I carry a lot of shame around that still, but I use that shame as a reminder of how bad things were and how quickly I can get back to that situation.
And it's a useful tool.
It is 100%.
Like when you're trying to build rapport.
And then as far as the other stuff, then I went through these little phases where I was like 6 months sober. I was a year sober coming out of the program because it was a year-long program. So at about the 18-month mark, I was like, well, everybody should trust me by now. Look at how freaking awesome I'm doing. Like, yay me.
I'm like the best at recovery.
Yeah, like I got this shit figured out.
Yeah.
And then I was like, forgive me and forgive me now.
Yeah.
Or trust me and trust me now. And this is where you got to be accountable. I put those people in my life through 22 years. I lied to them for 22 years. I broke their trust for 22 years. I did all these things. And then I was like, and I did atrocious things to people in my addictions, things that I'm still not proud of, never will be proud of, that I can never forgive. Well, I'm working on forgiving myself for it, but I still carry it with me, like I said, as a reminder. But I expected, my parents, my mom would check the liquor bottles all the time. I think she actually marked them. And I think there was
she'd be like, there's a way around that, right?
Yeah, I just put some water in.
Yeah.
So, I think that it made me upset. But then I had to think at the same time, like, how can I lie to people for 22 years and think that they're just going to forgive me just like that? It has to be a very much of put yourself in their shoes situation, or, it comes back to owning your shit. I had to realize, like, I broke these bridges of trust. It's going to take a long time to rebuild it. And it was the same with my, with the forgiveness and stuff. I mean, here's the thing is there's people that may choose to never forgive you, and that's their cross to bear. That's not yours.
Yeah.
You ask for forgiveness. It's making amends in the 12-step program. It's whatever you may call it. You ask for it. And if they choose to give it to you, fantastic. If they don't, then you have to understand that that's their choice, that you can't force forgiveness on anyone. So I asked a lot of people for forgiveness. Lots of them chose to forgive me. Lots of them seen how good that I was doing and said, yeah, we're proud of you. And some of them said, F you, man. What you did to me is unforgivable. That's their right. I didn't carry that stuff around with me. It's, nothing I can do about that.
I've had conversations and more recently, like I didn't remember some of the things that I did, and it's easy to hold a resentment if you feel like you're the victim, if you didn't deserve what happened or you didn't play a part in what happened in some way. And it was through having conversations with those people where they opened up to me and and shared with me some memories that they had and how that made them feel and how abandoned they felt and you know, how I may have wronged my son and stuff like that. And it didn't necessarily give me an air of guilt as much as I felt honored. Like, thank you for giving me that part of the story back.
Yeah.
You know?
And thank you for realizing that, maybe you're thinking that I'm at a point where I can handle this. And thank you for sharing with me how I made you feel, because that's the one thing we forget is we have harmed people and we have hurt people, and we should listen to how they feel. Just like they should understand how we felt, we need to understand how they felt. And that's, I've asked my parents numerous times, and I just don't know necessarily, and maybe not numerous times, my mom more than my dad, but I want my mom to really, at some point, I'm going to sit down and have a really, really hard conversation with her. Maybe it won't be hard for her anymore. Probably be hard for me still, about how did you feel for those 22 years when you sat up every night wondering if your son was alive or dead, or
like, what was it like raising Brad?
What was it? Yeah. What was it like? Because I know it couldn't have been easy. So, you know, and it felt like I was given a gift, you know, like it hurt to a certain extent, you know, but what was hurting me more was their unwillingness to talk about it and allow me to have ownership back of that part of our story. Well, and I'm such a firm believer that in order to heal, you have to reveal, right?
Yeah.
So I want everybody to be like, but if it was up to me, everybody would just be going around spewing shit on everyone. So that might not be too, you know what you did to me? This is how it made me feel, right?
Everything's on fire and Brad's like, my work here is done.
This is perfect. Absolute chaos, which is what I'm addicted to now.
So let's look at some comments here. Twinkle and Mike are sure active in the chat today. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. Love having you join the conversation. Twinkle says, I believe everyone is allowed to change, grow, bloom, and fly again, recovered. Some will never forgive. I will.
That's a great statement.
Yeah. Mike says, one of the hardest things to explain to one of my old friends is when I will trust and respect you again. I don't know, but I am trying, but I am saying it is possible to gain my trust and respect again. So, and that's an interesting point too. You can forgive someone for past wrongdoings without trusting them with your future.
Right.
You know?
I mean, a lot of people that forgave me in my recovery aren't a part of my life anymore. They chose to forgive me, but they chose to also not have me in their life anymore. And does it hurt? Some of the people, yes. Some of the people I may be better off without. Maybe we're better off without each other. But that, once again, it's their choice, right? Like, it comes back to what you were saying about what we were talking about how people feel due to what you've done to them. Some of the, I'm not even going to realize, because some of the stuff I can't even remember, some of the ways I've made people feel. Some of my friends, the way I spoke to them, the way I disrespected them, stole from them, some of the women that were in my life before, the way I treated them, lied to them, cheated on them, things like that. Those things, I can't even begin to imagine how they felt. And if they ever want to tell me that, for sure I'll sit and listen. But it's, maybe, you know, maybe they don't want to. Maybe it's just easier for them to not have a person who maybe they consider toxic in their life.
Well, and the thing that I've found too in the past is that some people don't want to open up old wounds.
Yeah.
You know, like there's very much that mentality from time to time where it's like, oh, the past is in the past. Let's just forget about it and move on, you know? And that's good in like day-to-day things. Like, and I'm talking through my own lens now. I'm not a professional in any, not like Brad, you know, but, there's things that need to be, you know, gone back to and cleaned out, you know, and, some people even like didn't want to hurt my feelings, you know, not understanding the gift of their words would be to me.
Right.
You know? So if I had anything to say, and I'm not saying to go out and start telling, you know, someone who's fresh in recovery, all of the things that you felt, maybe they're not ready for that, but I would say like, hold that thought you know, that someday perhaps, you know, the way you felt in the part of your story that they may not be interpreting properly could be like one of the greatest gifts that you could give a person.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're not going to tell them, I would say, excuse me, to tell someone, because if you're just taking old wounds and shitty things that people did to you and you're just jamming them inside and you're not talking to the person and you're not processing and you're not dealing with it, one of these days you're going to frickin' explode, and it's going to be you're going to bleed on someone you love, or, you know, it's going to be not a good situation. So if you're just collecting, if you go, oh, well, I'm just going to forgive and forget. I see a lot of people who are just like, it's just easier to not deal with it. Well, you're not dealing with it now, but where's it going? It's just going inside. And then eventually you collect all these shitty things that happened to you and you jam them all down
it's in
inside.
The past.
You know, I forgave, but have you?
Did
though?
you?
Yeah. That's the questions, right? Like, that's the one thing that I think you really need to pay attention to, is if you're like, yeah, I'm just going to let this go. Okay, then fucking let it go.
Yeah.
Pardon my language.
Oh,
but
no, it's fine.
But let it, if you want to be the person that's the let it go person, then be the person that actually lets it go. Because if you jam that shit down inside, you're gonna explode eventually. And I see this happen a lot, and I see it happen with friends of people in recovery. I see this happen with family members of not even recovery related. You know, oh, so and so keeps doing the same thing. Oh, it's just the way they are. Or, oh, they've changed now. It's in the past. I'm not going to deal with it. And then all of a sudden they one day they drop the fork on the floor and you have an absolute freaking meltdown, right?
Trigger response.
Yeah, like, because you never dealt
say.
with any of the shit that was causing you all the other stuff. So
yeah. So, and like, even to this day, I react to things. And like, I'm getting, and maybe y'all are getting sick of hearing about me and Donna today, but
no, man,
it's just lately we've been on this journey, and like, you know, and to go back actually before we do this part, I was gonna say, I've been meaning to bring it up. You mentioned about throwing away clean time or sober time or recovery time, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, I did a psychedelic ceremony, and it was fantastic.
Right.
You know, I definitely did not go for the light show, you know, like I've seen the light show before, but if I would have had the experience that I had at like a festival, I would have called that a bad trip all day long. Like,
right.
You know, but even after that, like, I don't consider that I lost any of my sobriety. I don't consider that any, like, you know, we're doing the counting the days and stuff. Like, I'm still 6.5 years sober, you know?
Right.
So, but when I went to a fellowship event, they did a countdown, you know, they do the clean time countdown. Right. And I don't like using the word clean, but sometimes it's just, that's what they call it. Right.
Right.
So, and I didn't stand up. Like, I was like, I didn't feel comfortable standing up and saying like, I'm 6.5 years or whatever, and getting the hugs and celebration and all that. So, I mean, I think, and where I'm going with this is like, do you think at some point ways of healing, ways that kept you safe, become toxic?
Do I think it's ways that kept me safe?
So like,
explain a little bit
like
more.
Ways of thinking. You know, like ways of thinking that once kept me safe. Like, there was a time where I thought that this modality of recovery is the only way
100%
anyone can do this. And that is the safe little recovery bubble that I built. But is it safe to just stay there forever?
I came through the old school recovery program, man. The Hard Knocks, the school of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's abstinence or it's nothing.
Yeah.
And man, my opinion on that has changed so much. I hear the term people throw around California sober or whatever it is. I mean, whatever. If you were doing heroin and you were almost dead and you were in the gutter and you were on the streets and you were doing all these toxic things, and now you smoke a little bit of pot and you're living a successful life, you're doing good.
Yeah.
You're in recovery, man.
I would say your recovery is intact.
Yeah.
You know,
I would not question your recovery one bit. And I might catch a lot of flack for saying that from certain people, and I don't really give a shit, because I've also worked on the street as an addictions counselor, and you have to figure out what's going to work. If I got a client, like I said, that's a fentanyl user, and their option is to smoke marijuana because it takes the edge off when they're coming off the fentanyl, and they're gonna use something like that as a harm reduction piece. I'm supporting that shit all day long, every day. You do what you got to do, man. Whatever. I'm all about harm reduction. And then, so you get all these diehard abstinence guys. Well, guess what, guys? Like, treatment, detox, all harm reduction.
Yeah, abstinence is an excellent harm reduction strategy.
The Ativan or the Valium or whatever they gave you so that you didn't have a seizure, harm reduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, come on, guys.
I worked in a treatment center and I was handing out lorazepam and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know,
I
maybe
mean,
I shouldn't have been, but I was. You know, like
you gotta figure out what's working for people. Like, once again, 7.5 billion people. Everybody's different. Recovery can't look the same for everyone. If it did, me and you could just sit down together, put our heads together, write a book, get fucking rich, and retire.
Yeah.
And we'd solve all the addictions problems.
I don't know what
we'd
we'd do with our time.
Yeah, me neither. I'd be out of a job, but we'd be rich. So
yeah.
but yeah, it doesn't look the same for everyone. And that way of thinking, that it's 2010. Like that's old 1990, whatever you want to say. It's old school thinking, and the drugs are progressing. So our thinking has to, and the drugs are changing. So our thinking has to change too. We can't live in this box. It's not, AA was started in the 50s, 40s. I don't remember.
I think
when.
it was the 30s.
30s maybe.
I should know this. You should
so
probably know this
should I too. But I don't remember.
Yeah.
So I don't have my trusty Google.
Yeah.
My phone's in my back pocket.
Yeah. Room full of computers. Can't even Google.
So you need that guy like Joe Rogan. Google when AA was created.
Donna does that on Sunday nights.
Oh, okay.
But Donna's not here today. So
Donna's not here, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, AA's been around for forever, and things got to change. So much has changed. The old ideas of AA, even if you look through the volumes, things are changing in there.
Yeah.
They're changing around new drugs, new things. They've come up with new programs. Like we're not just dealing with alcohol anymore. Like the drugs out there now are so much different. You can't try and run that same formula that you had before.
So before I squirreled out into that, I was talking about, I wanted to talk about being reactive, instead of responding, I'm reacting, and that's something like, well, if you were working a program, you'd have that under control, but I don't think that that's necessarily true, because there are times that, and even recently, we were talking, we're talking about buying a house, and Donna's like, last night, she's like, well, here's a house in Delmany. And I'm like, as if we're moving to Delmany. Like that was as if we're moving, like it was just like, there was no understanding at all, just boom, out there. And that started, and she reacted and I reacted. And this morning we both got up and we're like, sorry.
Yeah.
So like, does that happen to you still?
100%, man. Like I always say, as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and everybody's going to be like, yeah, we heard that about your poetry books too, and they're not out yet. But I'm actually in the middle of writing a legit book, and I'm going to call it The Long Road of Recovery. Not to recovery, because there's never an end to it. I'm going to recover till the day I die. I'm going to work on myself till the day I die. And
we're going to talk about that too.
And if I stop working on myself, I'm afraid that, I'm talking like recovery from all that ails me, not just substances, but I don't believe, truthfully, Daniel, and we can talk about this and we can spitball this back and forth and see how it goes. But I don't believe if you stop working on yourself, you're going to fall back into some form of shit. Maybe it won't be substances. Maybe you're far enough gone from substances, but maybe it's going to be pornography, or maybe it's gambling, or maybe it's going to be irrationally spending your money, or maybe it's going to be
podcast.
Yeah, spending too much on podcast equipment. Who knows? But
I don't do that, do I?
And no, not at all.
No, we're good.
So, anyways, I can't remember what I was saying.
Oh, we were talking about falling back into old behaviors.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still am guilty of. I'm working on stuff all the time. I mean, I was a very reactive person, like you said, and a lot of my reaction was anger or violence, because that's how I was raised. And when I still have to stop myself, and I'm still guilty of when me and my wife get into a heated argument, calling her a name that I regret immediately after, but it's not something I'm proud of. It's not something that I ever want to do. It's been there for so long.
It feels like it's something else takes over.
Yeah, it really does. It's like, A little switch goes off and away I go, and it's my old behavior.
Yeah.
And I work on it. And just like it's taking me this long to stay sober. It's also taken me a long time to change other behaviors that came with the addictions. The not being unfaithful was one of them. Anger, fighting. Like, I haven't been in a fight, thank the Lord, because I'm old now, and I probably would take me a year to recover from it. But I haven't been in a fight since like 2009, I don't think. So, and used to get into lots of fights. Didn't win a whole lot of them because of the shape I was usually in, but got in a lot of them. I don't do that anymore. I'm working on that. I try not to, I try to be healthy, but the bottom line is that we've all got little things that trigger us. Maybe it's trauma, some stuff from your past brings up certain feelings. Like you said, you alluded to this earlier. It brought up this feeling in me that I recognized. And often you haven't felt that for a while. And sometimes the last time I felt some of these feelings was in addictions. So I just go back to the way I dealt with it then, because that's the only way I really knew how.
And like my mom, for example, a little while ago, like I was talking to her about something, and I was getting like, I don't know, maybe I was getting angry about the thing I was talking about or whatever. And she's like, "Hey, can you stop yelling at me?" And I'm like, I wasn't yelling at you. I was yelling at the feelings that I was having.
Yeah. And I mean, this is another thing with me and my wife, right? Like when I get heated about something and instantly my voice gets loud
or passionate.
Yeah. I call it passionate. She doesn't always
She calls
agree.
it being an asshole.
Yeah. She doesn't always agree that it's passionate, but I get heated about something and I raise my voice, and I'm not even angry with her.
Yeah.
I'm just angry.
I do that same thing.
But then because of something maybe that's happened to her in the past, she recognizes this loud voice as anger towards her. So she takes that as anger towards her when I'm just angry. So we're at a spot now where we can have this conversation where I can say, like, I'm angry about this. I'm not angry at you at all. And she'll be like, okay, but maybe just bring the volume down. So I have to work on that, but I don't know, man. That's when I get, even on the podcast and stuff here, the more excited I get, the louder my voice gets, the more animated I get. And that's just the way I am, man.
Well, and that makes us good at, because I do the same thing. Like I'm always, and that makes us good at what we do, and we have a mutual friend, Alan Kaler, and he says, like I used to try and hinder some of that. But now I've come to realize that it's a beautiful gift if you use it properly.
I embrace it. I just have to make sure that I'm using it properly.
And that, well, exactly, and that's the thing about that I'm learning about substance use disorder as well, is that we all want to feel okay. We all want to be okay. You look around you in this room, and everything that you see, including the wood on the walls and the person that made the fans in the computer, everything is a direct result of someone trying to be okay. Whether that's through working to make the money or following their passion or whatever.
Right.
So we just got lost along the way.
100%.
I found something that I could snort a line of this and feel like I was completely fulfilled, that my life was filled to the top with meaning and nothing was wrong.
Yeah, I could do some of that and then not feel the terrible things that I had felt before.
Instead of chasing my passion, or instead of finding meaning, instead of being of service and helping someone else.
Sure.
The things that typically are taught in society, whether that's through religion or through whatever. I found that when I took that drive to feel better and I pointed it in a productive direction, fuck, man, holy shit.
There's nothing you can't accomplish.
There's nothing. Like you take someone who is recovering from addiction and you give them something to put meaning in their life, you stay the fuck out of their way.
Well, and I always say this because people are so judgmental when it comes to people struggling with substance use, with mental health. Some of the most amazing, the smartest, the most brilliant, all of those people I met in recovery rooms, man. Like there's just so many amazing people there. Walked all the years in treatment programs, musicians that have come through that are so uber talented. Like, man, you guys make people on American Idol and all these shows look like terrible. Like, it's just channeling. And because of stuff that's happened and because they they found something that maybe helped them cope with pain, they weren't able to channel their directions properly. And I found with me, and I think maybe if I would have found this early on, it might have changed everything, that really once I started helping people, that fulfilled a huge gap, a huge hole in my soul. And now it's almost become my addiction. And it's, if I would have maybe found that early on, like if I would have seen what just talking to a person and helping them could have done, maybe I wouldn't have used all those substances for so long. But I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. That, you know, that brought up an interesting question to me. Do you think you can get addicted to recovery? Do you think you can get addicted to service?
If you can, I'm pretty sure I'm close.
Yeah.
You know, like I spend almost too much of my time, like almost to an unhealthy. So what I talk about this quite a bit with my clients is it's like, you know, be careful what you do, even physical fitness, like, because I promote physical fitness because I like it and it works for me, and it doesn't work for everyone. And I know that, but it works for me. So I share that with people. But for a while, physical fitness took over my life to the point where I would get mad if I couldn't go to the gym. Like if my daughter had an event that went around at the same time that I usually went to the gym, I'd be upset about that.
Was that because you're going to miss out on the gains?
It was.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it because you're trying to get jacked, or was it because you genuinely wanted to feel
It was
better?
a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of a vanity thing, and I liked it so much. But that's the thing. I liked it so much, right? Just like an addiction, just like the substances. So it started to take over my life. And so I believe that if you love something and it can be problematic, like my helping people has in times been problematic to my life with my kids and my life with my wife, because me and my wife should be spending a nice night on the couch and people are blowing up my inbox and I'm responding to them about recovery stuff and I'm paying no attention to my wife. So now I have to be careful. Is this becoming an unhealthy thing as well? Because I honestly feel like we can get addicted to anything.
Absolutely. And I have been, like, this room, I've spent a lot of hours in this room.
Yeah, I know.
A lot.
I can tell.
Yes. Yes. And it's very true. Like, we were talking a bit before the show, I was sharing with you about how our recent event that we organized, you know, it went off very well, and I'm very pleased. You know, the media was there and we were on the news and global and all the different channels, and I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing. So I'm like high, right? Like I'm on this high, like, yes, this is working, all this hard work. That's the fix. Right. That is the fix.
Well, that's your high. Yeah. 100%.
And then for the days after that, there was more productive conversations, and like, there was like prospects being talked about and more opportunities. And it was I'm like, this is awesome. I have arrived. And then like, it was like I was on a bender.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have to manage how excited I get now. You know, I have to recognize that I'm almost like, I'm manic or whatever. I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing myself, but that's how I can describe
that's
it.
a good description of manic.
But as soon as it got quiet, I crashed, and it wasn't good. Like last night, it wasn't like, I wasn't in a good place. And what do I do when my go-to now is look at my analytics? You know, because that's the fix too. It's just a different kind of line now.
Yeah. Well, numbers, you know, some people become addicted to the financial aspect that comes with it. You know, it's all about making the money.
If the lines are going up,
right,
I'm good.
Yeah.
If the lines are going down, I'm not good.
Right.
You know, like that's something that I need to be very cognizant of now. So, and that's a behavior thing.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, we could talk about the behavioral therapy part of it all at a different conversation. But there's, I mean, I honestly believe you have to be careful with everything you do in your life, whether it's food, whether it's work, whether it's sex, whether it's whatever, physical activity, all that stuff. Because if you all of a sudden are using that and filling a void, and that's occupying your mind all the time, you're in another addiction. If you can't step back, you know, if you start to notice that it's causing problems, you're not spending time with your family, you know, you're missing certain things that are important,
or you're there but you're on your phone.
Yeah, or you're at work but you're checking. You're at one job, but you're checking. I've done this before. You're at one job, but you're checking the emails from the other job and trying to respond. And, and you know, it's
incessantly checking.
Yes.
Because you need that fix. And a promising email comes in. That's the fix.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
we're just. I think a lot of life is just replacing, especially in recovery for a lot of addicts. It's replacing that negative shit with something that's positive or more positive at least.
So is that addiction or is that the human condition?
That's a question that I don't think that neither one of us can answer. I would say it's a little bit of both. But I always say, and I've said this to all my clients, I don't think that I know a person in the world that's not addicted to something. So it's whether it's technology or sex or food or alcohol or cocaine,
Work, whatever.
Work, acceptance, you know, like you have to be accepted, likes on social media.
Oh God, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Man.
Like, and then like, you know, you see a lot of this now with the fitness influencers and stuff like that. Like how many people they can reach, you know, like they're real, how many comments and likes and stuff they get. They become obsessed with it.
Well, and I can very easily too, you know, like this is the nature of my work. Very much when I'm looking at business proposals, very much they are looking at my likes. They're looking at my views, you know? So not only is it giving me a dopamine, like when I get, like the other day I had a meme, it reached like 3 million people. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, you know? And then the next meme didn't reach anybody. I'm like,
20.
oh,
Yeah. And then you're trying to figure out, is it the algorithm?
Oh,
what time
God,
did I put it up?
It's the algorithm. Here's the secret to the algorithm. It's fucked.
There is no
it doesn't
secret.
make sense. In my 2.5 years, my research finding indicates that the algorithm makes no sense.
Yeah.
And just do what you love, and that's it.
Yes, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and maybe that's the key to life too.
I think it is. I think I'm slowly figuring it out. Like, and that's why I said the long road of recovery. I'm not talking specifically about substance use. I mean, I feel fairly confident where I'm at right now, 11 years in. I don't want to use substances. I have no desire. My life does not improve with them. It gets worse with them. I know that. Now, I'm not saying I am also never to the point where I would say that if something terribly tragic happened, that it couldn't make me, that it wouldn't jog me into feeling that I don't want to feel this, so I need to numb again. I'll never say that. But right now where I'm at, I'm in a really fantastic spot. But I need to stay in recovery because I need to, if I don't keep doing all these things that I'm going to talk about in my book, selfish little plug there again, then I'm going to fall back into bad habits. And it may not be necessarily substances, but maybe it will be something, you know, media or pornography or food or excessive amounts of working out or vanity or any of those things, because they're all unhealthy for you.
Do you have anyone in your life now that will hold you accountable? And like, do they know, like, do they approach you with kindness now? Or they're like, hey man, you're messing up here.
I have a couple really good people, like some solid friends.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Al. Al's been a really stable, fantastic person in my life. He's pretty much got an open door policy where I can pop in and be like falling apart here. And, you know,
And
my wife for sure holds me accountable. I mean, nobody's perfect, right? Like I try and hold her accountable too, and we don't always do it in the proper ways, but we are there to try and recognize that. My kids hold me accountable.
How old are they?
14, 13, and 11. All girls. So say goodbye to my hair that's underneath this hat.
Yeah.
So it's all going to fall out over the next couple of years, but they hold me accountable. They notice. My daughters will say like, oh, you're gone. Or where have you been? Or what are you doing? Or are we doing something tonight? Or are you going to be locked in the basement again in your office? You know, that's accountability from the kids.
Even my 9-year-old son, like he'll take my phone. He'll be like, Dad, put your phone down. Dad, you're always on your phone. You know, like if we went to a movie, we went and saw, what movie did we go and see? Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but I was in there and then I felt my phone vibrate and I was doing so good. And this is like a thing that I'm conscious of. Like, I know this is a problem, you know? So, and I'm like, I gotta look. And he's like, no, Dad. And he put it down. And I'm like, fuck. I gave him a hug, you know? Yeah. So
I'm really trying to hold myself more accountable when I go on holidays and stuff. Me and my wife went on a little golf trip, did kind of some golf course around central Saskatchewan, camped, had a great time, but I left my phone purposely we had a little cabin type thing. I left it in the cabin purposely dead because I knew if I had it on me on the golf course or anywhere, I'd be like, well, maybe I'll just check those 12 emails that are in the inbox now, because one of them could be a potential customer or something, you know, and you got to recharge.
Yeah. And I always, like, we went camping this summer and we went to a campground that didn't have cell service.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
That's
was
where I need to
beautiful.
find.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg Lake.
Okay.
Yeah. Go there.
I will. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. All right, man. Is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I mean, we kind of said we might piss a few people off doing this, and maybe we have, but I think the bottom line is that you need to hold yourself accountable in your recovery. It's one of the big things: accountability, honesty, forgiveness, dealing with traumas, all these things. You have to do it. And it's going to look different for everyone. It's not going to look the same.
Mhm.
But if you're blaming everybody else for your problems, you're not going to get out of those problems. You're not. If you're constantly finding somebody to pass the buck on and never looking within self, you're going to stay in that same rut for a long period of time. So I guess my message for everybody is just make sure that you're taking a good hard look in the mirror when you're approaching recovery and taking ownership of your own shit.
Mm-hmm. Where can people find you?
www.bradsiroski.com, Brad Siroski on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well. Slowly moving to TikTok. So I've been advised to move to TikTok. So I don't know, man. Too much media for me, but I'll do it. And yeah, that's where you can find me. Feel free to look me up if your loved ones need counseling. I have a counseling service. Public speaking always available. Thanks for having me on again, man.
Awesome.
Love being here.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you are getting something out of what we're doing here, give us a like at the bottom of the screen there. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We go live every Friday morning, every Sunday evening, right here on the Hard Knox Talks YouTube channel. You can also find all our audios on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's it for now. Have a safe weekend, everyone. We'll see you again next time.